Well, what is that? What? A tiger. Thank you very much. No, that was it. Thank you. It's been confusing me for weeks, I thought they'll know in Vegas. Now, the reason I show you this is there was a study done a while ago of cultural differences in visual perception. And in it, they got people from contrasting cultures, actually Southeast Asian cultures and North America, to look at thousands of pictures and to simply say what they were looking at. That was the experiment. They also have cameras that track their eye movement. And they were hypothesizing that there was a big cultural difference in what people see. Not what they think about it, what they see. And this seemed to bear it out. It was published actually, or informed a book called The Geography of Thought. The bottom line was this really, that people in North America, or I think you could probably say Western cultures more broadly, when they saw an image like this, like many of you did, they'd say, what's that? Say, it's a tiger. And there is indeed a tiger right there. People from Southeast Asia typically didn't say that. They more typically said, it's a jungle with a tiger. Or it's a tiger in a jungle. Or it's a jungle and they didn't mention the tiger at all. Now, I'm not saying one's right, the other's wrong, one's good, one's bad, that's not the point, it's just a difference. It's a very interesting one, isn't it? Because we're all got the same information, but we see it very differently. And the hypothesis was elaborated to offer at least some speculative explanation, and it was that they thought that people from Western European cultures, like us, were broadly preoccupied with individualism. And therefore, our eye tends to be drawn to what we think is the subject of the picture. People in Southeast Asian cultures, they speculated, have a more nuanced sense of community and of relationships and their place within the structure. So they tend to look at the whole picture automatically and naturally, rather than what they think is the subject. Now, I say it's not one's good, one's bad, it's different. But it's a very important difference, because what it points to is this, I think, that human beings, unlike the rest of life on Earth, so as we can judge it, don't live in the world directly. We don't live in the direct sensory world only. We live in worlds of ideas, we live in worlds of beliefs and faith and values and understandings and propositions and ideas, many of them enshrined in our languages and in our cultural practices. There's a genuine sense in which we haven't recently invented virtual reality, we invented it the minute we started to think in the way that we think. We live in virtual worlds. And you know what it means, that for people who are immersed in their own culture, we mistake other people's cultural views as more or less deviant, and we think of our own as common sense. I know that. I mean, when I moved from England to America, you get confronted with all kinds of differences which you don't notice if you live here. And you would go to England and find all sorts of things quaint that we think are just natural the way things ought to be. We live in a virtual space. And many of the great challenges we face in the world are now cultural in character. It's the great collision of worldviews, of virtual reality, effectively. But they grow out of our capacity for creative thinking. And so do many of the challenges that we face. The problem is we haven't seen far enough. So my argument is we need to understand the nature of creative thinking, the nature of creativity and innovation, how it drives human culture, and how it accounts for success and failure of our societies, our communities, our schools, and our businesses. It's not an incidental issue. But I want to give an example. You see, the best example I can think of about why creativity is pervasive, and Elisa, by the way, said this at the beginning, that some people think they're not creative. My argument to you is that everybody has profound creative powers. You may not have found them, you may not have evolved them, but you have them. They're there. You know, if you're a human being, it comes with a kit. You know, but it's like literacy. Not everybody can read and write. Everyone's capable in all these circumstances, but you need to develop the capacity to do it, the skills that are involved. The best example to me is that we create our own life. You know, there are 100 billion people on the planet, all told, and every single life has been different, unique, and unrepeatable. Nobody's had your life, nobody ever will have your life, nobody will repeat your life, nobody will lead the lives your children are going to lead, nobody has led the life your parents led. Every single biography is unique. And the reason is you create your life as you go. You know, we subscribe to a myth, don't we? We think that life is linear. We do that when we come to write our resume. You know, because you present two sides of paper with the highlights of your life set out, and some dates in bold and others in italic, and the whole premise that you want to convey is this was a plan. Because the last thing you want to convey is the actual chaos you've been living through all this time. You know, the constant process of improvisation that's involved. I mentioned Oklahoma earlier. I've been running, thank you. I've been running helping with a program in Oklahoma called the Oklahoma Creativity Project. Oklahoma wants to become the state of creativity. Now, when I say that outside of America, people go, really? Inside America, people go, really? And I say, yes, really. Because there are 3.5 million people in Oklahoma, very fantastic institutions, and wherever you get a gathering of human beings, there's a great reservoir of creative potential. It's about creating the conditions for it to form itself. I published a book a few years ago called The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything. What drove it was a perception I had, that I'm sure you will share, that very many people don't enjoy the lives they lead, or particularly the work they do. They endure what they do and they wait for the weekend. But I also think people love what they do and couldn't imagine doing anything else. If you said, why don't we change track for a bit, they'd think, well, why would I do that? I love this. It's not what I do, this is who I am. This defines me. They could be teachers, they could be software developers, they could be academics, they could be homemakers, they could be veterinarians, it could be anything. Think of any kind of occupational way of life. Some people will love it and other people couldn't stand it for more than 5 minutes. It's part of the great diversity of human talent and interest. The element for me is where talent meets passion. One of the people I interviewed for the book, who's actually performed in this very arena, so I feel very privileged to be here, one of the people I interviewed for the book was Paul McCartney, the bass guitarist of the popular music group, the Beatles. I mention this because I think it's very important you do not leave this arena today unaware of the fact that I hang out with Paul McCartney. So Paul, not to me. We cancel each other out. Anyway, Paul McCartney, or Paul, as I call him, is from Liverpool. I'm from Liverpool too, as you know, and he's older than me, as you can tell. But he went to school in the city centre, so did I, different school, but across the city centre, in the 1950s. And I helped in the early days of his school becoming converted to a school for the performing arts. It's called the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. He's the patron, it's a fantastic school. So I talked to him about the book and how he discovered his own talents and so on, and he said, I said, did you enjoy music at school? He said, no, I didn't. I said, did your music teacher think you had any musical talent? He said, no. Well, he does, doesn't he? Don't you think? So, one of the other, on the same music program in the same school, 2 years behind him, was George Harrison, the lead guitarist of the popular music group, the Beatles. And so I said, did your music teacher think George had any talent? He said, no, not at all. He does, doesn't he? So I said, well, would this be a fair assessment? That there was this one music teacher in Liverpool in the late 1950s who had half the Beatles in his class. And he missed it. He said, that's right. Well, it's a bit of an oversight, isn't it? Is anybody stand out in your class this year, Mr. Wilcox? Not really. Nobody springs to mind. Elvis Presley went to school in Tupelo, Mississippi, and he wasn't allowed in the glee club at school. They said he would ruin their sound. Elvis. Well, we all know what great heights the glee club went on to. Once they kept Elvis out of the picture. This is my point, that we're all born with immense natural talents, capacities, and possibilities. We're all unfinished business. Your children are all unfinished business. What becomes of them, what becomes of you, what you make of yourself, has everything to do with how deeply you dig into your own talents and potential, and how much you trust in it to help them create the life that's suggested by them. One of the people I interviewed in the book, in Oklahoma, is a guy called Bart Conner. Have you heard of Bart Conner?